Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Guy, and thank you for remembering uh, our servicemen. Um, Let me get my video going here. It didn't want to cooperate.
It's okay.
Okay, there we
Yeah,
go.
yes.
All right. Dear Father, I just come before you, and as I give my testimony, I pray that you will guard my lips. May this testimony be true and 100% from you. Yeah, testimony. I should have known this as a police officer. It's basically just a witness. I'm here now on the witness stand, and the witness that I've been called to give is my witness of God and uh, the reality of God and the reality of God in my life. And as I went back, I thought, wow, I'm 73 years old. There's a lot of life there for to cover. So I'm not going to cover my life so much as except some real focal points where I know God's hand was on my life. And as we're told in the verses, his hand is on our life from actually before we come into physical existence. I don't understand this quite, but I do know from a second-hand witness. This is the only second-hand witness I'll give it, and it's from my father, who I know is a pretty honorable man. I never caught him lying. So he told me that as I was born, that I was injured with a pair of forceps. And in that injury, what happened is I lost the capability of my right eye. It become flattened and it wasn't very functioning. And a few other things, but I won't go into that. Uh, and that was always a difficult thing for me because it kept me from a dream that I had, from a desire of what I wanted to do. And that would have been to probably be over there with Guy flying an airplane. I desired to do exactly what my oldest son has put as his dream and a focal point and is at this moment doing. So if I had of, I see now in retrospect, after my 73 years in drawing closer to God, God's hand was on me even in that injury that I received because I didn't go to Vietnam as a pilot. I didn't have the eyes to do it. And I think a good chance I might not come out of that conflict. We came very close to losing someone very precious to us, Guy, in that conflict. And God's hand was on him, though, and saw him through it. So, in retrospect, God's hand was on my life even before I had a personal relationship with Jesus. But yet, I cannot recall a time in my life that I didn't believe in God. Even before I had that personal relationship and received the gift of salvation, I knew God because my parents and my grandparents, I was very fortunate. God placed me in a home that I never was taught anything but God. And so from my grandmother's knee, and in an effort to please her, I accepted it and never really quite understood it. But when I did at 9 and did finally realize what it all meant and that I'd never realized, I never believed that I was anything but good. My parents were also very, I don't think I ever got spanked once. I probably should have been spanked a few more times, but a few times, if not a lot. But they were very gentle with my upbringing. So I never saw the reality of my sin until God confronted me with a Billy Graham broadcast on a black and white TV. And when I realized that I was a sinner and that even though I had professed God, I hadn't really understand what I was professing. So God's hand was on me. He led me then to a knowledge of who I was and who he was. I continued on now as a believer with my salvation, but not as a very dedicated believer. I kind of went the prodigal son route. And after high school, I actually shook my fist at God. I didn't deny him or the reality of him, but I just said, I want to live this life, my life. I want control of my life. Leave me alone. And he honored that. Spirit of God went back, and I had a few years to fly my own airplane for a while. And I was in what pilots know as a death spin. I was, one wing was flying, the other one wasn't, and I was heading for the ground fast. And at that moment, it was a moment, one of the moments that if it hadn't been for the intervention of God, I would have not been here with you now physically. I called out to God, and he met me again. I said, God, I'm ready to cash it in because this ain't much fun. So I said, but if you still want me or love me, please let me know because, I'm calling out to you. And he did immediately. Holy Spirit flooded me. He's directed me through many situations since then, but my witness of him, I have seen it constantly. And the more I seek him, the more I see it. And now I see my life as being directed by God, even when I didn't desire for him to be, he still kept me in that path by putting up barriers. Now he keeps me in that path by guiding me when I surrender to him every morning. If I'll surrender in the morning, seek him the first thing I do when I get up, he takes over my life. And even though it may not be what I expected that day or what I desired that day, it turns out at the end of the day to be a good day. So my witness is God is real. We're in a conflict here. We're in a conflicted world. There's a game going on. There's a eternal game being played out right now. The whole game is right here in the Holy Bible. We can see the game where it started, and we can also see the end. Even though the game isn't over, we can go to the Revelation, and we can see the end of the game. So my witness is that God is real. I know it through 73 years of experience. I can either experience it negatively by not walking with him and in his spirit and being smacked by barriers that come up of my own cause, or put there by God, or maybe even Satan puts up barriers sometimes. Or I can turn and follow God and experience and see him as a guiding light. I'm choosing more and more to do the latter. And I encourage you as believers to do that. It's much more pleasant. And it's real. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the living God. And none of us would. I also see that if you don't believe in God, I'm encouraging you to just ask him to reveal himself to you, because he has been trying to reveal himself to every one of you, even if you don't accept him. Just do it, because the funny thing about this game that we're involved in here is you can switch sides. You can come to God's side, which is Jesus Christ. And Jesus said, you're either with me or you're against me. There's no in-between grounds. You can't be, well, kind of with him and kind of against him. So I encourage you to join God through Jesus Christ. And if you need to know more about that, please talk to Pastor Steve or Pastor Guy or myself or anyone that is a true believer. They can explain it a little more in detail. But I encourage you, my witness is God is real. And there's nothing that can take that away from me. I know he's real. I've experienced it for my 73 years, even when I didn't acknowledge experience it. Now I see it was him. So please take a look. If you don't believe in God, take one more look for me, if you would, as a favor to me. Just ask God to reveal himself to you. Number two, if you're already on God's side, if you believe in him, if you have a relationship to him, I encourage you to start each day surrendering to his will and learning more about him from the positive side, from the joy and the peace that you will have in doing what he wants you to do for this day and every day of your life, for the rest of your life, and then on into eternity. So that's about all I got to say. You know, if you want to know more about my life, yeah, you can ask me one-on-one and I'll talk all day on about it. But my wife tells me it's time. So I would like to turn this over to Pastor Steve and just thank him for this opportunity to speak and give you my witness of God. Because I'll tell you, it's been nothing but joy when I surrendered to him. Thank you very much.